Good morning, YouTube. We're going to start a new series called DIY or Don't Even Try.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
If you're new to the channel, my name is Dan, and this is our dealership, NG Supercars. And today, we're going to give you 5 different service jobs on the Ferrari F430 and let you know, should you DIY this or don't even try this? All right, so first of all, we're going to start off with a disclaimer. I have no idea about what your wrenching experience is. So we're going to make assumptions and say that you have a basic level of wrenching experience. Like you've probably done a few things on some cars before. We're going to assume you have a reasonable toolkit, with a decent amount of tools. I can't even define it because it's from 0 to infinity, right? So I don't know what you're comfortable with. And obviously we're going to discuss the things in detail to know whether or not you should be comfortable with this or not. So that being said, please take everything with a grain of salt and judge it to what you think your experience level is and what you're comfortable with. And obviously that's the biggest thing is if you don't feel comfortable doing some of these jobs, don't do it. Don't put yourself in a bind. But at the same time, if you have backup, so if you say, you know what, I really want to do this myself, and if it gets stuck, well, then I can phone a friend, or, worst case scenario is someone comes with a tow truck and gets the car and takes it somewhere else that can finish the job. I mean, I guess a further worst case scenario is, and we'll talk about this more so, is can you really screw this up to the point of causing harm? Okay, so that'll be one of the things that is factor that in. If you mess up, are you going to blow up the car or kill yourself? Those are things to consider. That being said, all right, the first thing we're going to talk about is an oil change on the Ferrari F430. Okay, so the oil change on the Ferrari F430 is not like a typical oil change. So if you've changed the oil on your, fill in the blank with some fairly common car, even most sports cars, even like any sort of non-dry sump car. And if you don't know what that means, maybe you should have someone else do it. But if you know what that I'm saying when I say this is a dry sump car, okay, we're at least getting somewhere. So you got to remember, it's not necessarily that the oil change is that much more complicated than any other car, except that you can't always get access to everything you need to. So, obviously we're gonna need some sort of way of getting the car up in the air. And if you don't have access to a lift, that's gonna be challenging. So you can do it on jack stands. I've done these on jack stands. It's not ideal, but it is possible. So you will need to pull off the bottom panel in order to put this car up in the air if you're using jack stands, just as a forewarning. Now there are actually holes cut in the panels to do a basic oil change without having to pull the bottom panel. I, however, do recommend if you're going to do an oil change, since it's probably once a year or so, you should pull the bottom panel anyway, just so that you can inspect, make sure that there's no leaks, and make it a dual purpose thing. But that being said, a few things to note: you're going to need 10 plus quarts of oil. So 10 quarts of 5W40 oil. We recommend the Pennzoil if you're in the US, the Pennzoil Euro Platinum. You can't really get Shell, which is what they actually recommend. Honestly, pretty much any of the modern high quality Euro blend oils, fully synthetic, are probably acceptable. But if you want to use as much caution as possible, Pennzoil 5W40 Euro Platinum is approved for the 430. Of course, you'll need an oil filter and some crush washers. You'll also need a torque wrench to set the torque on the bottom bolts. Now, you've seen me do these on many cars. In fact, you've seen my catastrophic first time I ever changed oil on one of these cars. Ah, son of a bitch. Well, that sucks. All right, I'm glad I could show you how not to do it right. And well, it's not that it's that bad, but you will want to have a good catch pan and stuff. But ultimately, it is DIY friendly in my book. Do your research, make sure you know how to top up and check the oil correctly once you're all done. That's really the biggest thing, is checking the oil with the engine running with it at temperature so you don't overfill it. If you can do that, then reasonably low risk. I mean, yeah, you could screw up and not torque down a plug correctly and have it dump all the oil, but honestly, you're going to probably see the oil going places. I don't know, I guess you could cross thread something or over tighten a bolt and have it strip out and then you've got issues there. So yeah, as long as you're doing everything torque specs and blah, 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 you're probably A-okay. All right, next up, a super common problem on these is leaking fuel pumps. Should you DIY or don't even try? Well, this one's actually complicated. We're gonna say the answer is it depends. So what do I mean by that? Well, it depends on if you have one of the later Ferrari F430s or one of the early Ferrari F430s. And the delineation is somewhere in the 07s. The 05s and 06s, DIY friendly. 07s, sometimes. 08s and 09s, not really. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's have a look. All right, so this one is one of the later cars and it is not DIY friendly. And the reason is because in the early cars, there's your fuel pump right there and there. That one's obviously easier to see, so we'll just focus on this. And this is one of the original fuel pumps. You can see it's a kind of a whitish color versus that one's more of a cream color. If you see the white color fuel pumps, you want to replace them. They do crack and leak, and that is how these cars catch on fire. So it's a very good idea to replace these if they are original. Now, on the early cars, there is a separate ring on the top of the fuel tank. It's got like 10 different bolts, and you can unbolt that entire ring once you've detached the fuel pump. Do that first. And that ring allows you to rotate the fuel pump out and get an angle so that it can come out on the coupes. Now, this is also, I should clarify, this is for the coupes. If you have a Spider, it is DIY friendly either way on the coupes. Because they switched the fuel tanks to not have that ring on the later cars, it becomes a big pain in the ass. Now, if you're real adventurous, you can still do it. But what you're gonna have to do is actually pull off the fender liner, disconnect the strap over the fuel tank, disconnect this hardware right here, and you actually have to push the fuel tank in and tilt it in order to get the angle to clear that part of the frame up there. So it makes it significantly more difficult on the later cars. So ultimately, if you have one of these later cars, I would say you probably don't want to do that yourself. It is a pain in the ass. If you have one of the early cars, you may want to take it on. Now, obviously, another thing to consider is you're playing with stuff with fuel. So if you're not comfortable with that, don't do it. There is obviously fire risk. There's certain precautions you need to take, making sure that things are ventilated well and making sure you don't spill fuel onto anything that's going to catch on fire or cause a spark. So again, use your judgment, but it is reasonably easy on the early cars and on the Spiders, but not on the later coupes. All right, next on the list is valve cover gaskets. So super common to have the valve cover gaskets on these cars start leaking. Is it DIY friendly or don't even try? I'm gonna lean towards it's don't even try. And it's not even that it's necessarily that super hard. It's that there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. So let me show you what I'm talking about. The problem with doing the valve cover gaskets is in order to get to them, you have to remove the A-frame, this aluminum frame right here. In order to remove the A-frame, you're gonna have to remove the air box, and you're gonna have to remove some other parts. So you got a lot of stuff that you have to remove just to get to the valve covers. Now, there's also a lot of bolts, a lot of hardware, and honestly, it's just uncomfortable. It's not super DIY friendly. It's not that it's really that complicated a job. It's just that there's a lot of things to remember. You have to make sure you keep all your bolts organized. If you're going to do this yourself, I would recommend taking a lot of pictures of everything along the way so that you know, oh, hey, this wire is routed there. These wires are routed here. This bolt goes there. Make sure you separate all your bolts and keep them well organized. So yes, it can be done. If you're adventurous and maybe you're a little bit more experienced, then take it on. But if you haven't done a ton of wrenching, not the greatest thing to start with. Pretty involved. And here's the thing, if you screw it up, you can risk causing potential damage. Like if you drop something into the valve, into the camshaft area, or if you don't clean things correctly, you could get some debris in there. If you use the wrong bolts, they might actually, strip out some threads. You talk about aluminum parts, so you got to be gentle with them. Got to make sure you get the torque specs down right. I mean, it's not like it's oh my God, your probability of blowing up something is real high. It's not, but the risk of something going awry is higher just because of the separate number of steps. So you have to remove the bottom panel, you have to hold the transmission in place while you remove the A-frame. Just a lot of stuff going on. Generally, I would say send this to someone, if nothing else, because it's uncomfortable. You're having to lean over the fenders, and it's just awkward, not comfortable. So not an ideal thing to do DIY. All right, next up, another really common problem on these cars is header failures. So replacing the headers, DIY or don't even try. I'm actually gonna say it's sort of DIY friendly if you're really patient and have the right tools. So let me explain. Okay, so the headers on these cars are known to crack and fail. And when they do, we recommend going with an aftermarket header solution. Now, the problem with replacing the headers is just the access sucks. And you have a high probability of having some of the nuts strip out. So you have to have all sorts of wonky tools with the right angles and bends and stuff. So I believe they're all 12 millimeter or 13 millimeter. I think they're 12. And so it's uncomfortable. It's limited access. You have to disconnect the AC compressor and push it aside. You have to have the bottom panel off. There's just a lot of stuff, but honestly, it's not that hard, again, if you have the right tools and patience. There's some risk of having issues go bad. So if you do these wrong, you might have a gasket blowout, which could be bad. Other than that, though, honestly, I guess you could not reattach the O2 sensors and cause it to cause issues, but reasonably low risk. It's just a pain in the ass. So from the suffering score, definitely want to send it to someone to do it. If you're up for suffering and you're patient and you have a reasonably good collection of tools, not impossible to do on your own. It does take a while, especially the first time you do it. It can take many, many hours, but you just got to be patient and you can work your way through it. So overall, I'm going to say most people do not want to do this themselves, but if you're reasonably skilled and have a good toolbox and you're patient, it's not impossible and it's reasonably DIY friendly. It's not complicated. It's just a pain in the ass. Okay, and finally, the last of our 5 things we're going to talk about is a clutch replacement. Should you DIY or don't even try? This one, real simple. Don't try this. Please don't, unless you really know what you're doing. Let me explain. All right, so if we're doing a clutch job and we're going to assume you're doing it on an F1 system, there is an awful lot of stuff you have to do. You have to remove the A-frame, the air box. You got to get the transmission out. You got to replace the clutch itself. You're going to have to recalibrate the clutch. So unless you have the tools to do that, you won't even be able to do that yourself. You have to have the right computer equipment to set the new calibration for the clutch. So overall, there's a lot of specialty tools involved. There's a lot of parts that you could screw up and break. There's a lot of things that you need to do right. And if you don't calibrate the clutch right, so even if you physically get everything done correctly and you don't calibrate the clutch, you're going to burn it out immediately and you're going to be very sad because you just wasted $5,000+ in parts and you're going to have to do it all again. So overall, not a DIY job. Absolutely don't do this yourself unless you are fairly competent and have the right computers and right tools to do this job. So overall, just don't send it somewhere. It's expensive, but you know what? You're going to be glad that you paid someone else to do it and they did it well. All right, so there you have it. There's some different DIY or don't even try jobs on the Ferrari F430. Let us know what other jobs should we talk about. And it doesn't have to be on the 430. We can talk about other Ferrari models that we get in here regularly. So, give us some suggestions and we're going to try and start doing this semi-regularly. Some jobs that we do here in the shop regularly and some jobs that are less common. And we'll let you know, should you DIY this or don't even try it. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. Check out normalguysupercar.com and ngsupercars.com, parts and services website, and our dealership website. And of course, subscribe to this channel and Normal Guy Premium, our vlog channel. We'll see you guys in the next video. We're going to be doing a lot of cool car stuff. You're going to want to stay tuned. It's going to be sweet.